And good day to you all, and thanks for joining me on this celebration of Jane Jacobs and the 5th anniversary of Jane's Walk, Milwaukee. The theme for this year is Take 5, so I'll be highlighting 5 intersections along Brady Street. My name is Chris Root. I'm an architect, Milwaukee resident, with a passion for living at the intersection of architecture, urban design, and historic preservation. With that, it brings me to the intersection here of Water and Van Buren-Holton and Brady Street. And here is where Brady Street actually begins, as does my tour. We're here in the Brady Street Park, dedicated in 2007. A gift from the McCormick and Mervis family. A wonderful urban green space, to be sure. Now, Brady Street was named in 1836, but it's unclear as to the individual for whom the street is named. Some ambiguity does exist. In Carl Baer's book, Milwaukee Streets, The Stories Behind Their Names, he lists 2 possibilities, with the most likely being one George Brady, a possible friend or co-investor of the Chicago developers who platted the subdivision that includes Brady Street. Brady Street District became a national, state, and local historic district in the late 1980s, early 90s. And here we are at the corner of Brady and Cass, our second intersection on this tour. Across the street we see 1693 North Cass Street, built in 1883. This 2.5-story symmetrical frame double house was built as an income property for Isaac Black, a local flower inspector. The building, which rests on a raised, rusticated limestone basement, is composed of 2 front gable blocks connected by a saddle roof. The building has been extensively altered, including changes to the fenestration and the application of substitute siding. As a building type, however, this double house is relatively rare in Milwaukee. The homes across the street indicate the type of fine-grained residential properties that would have lined Brady Street for many, many years. Of consequence, we see Casablanca, which is originally built in 1956, and the restaurant occupying this building at one point was called Beyond the Sea, with a nautical motif on the exterior. Later it became the Casablanca when it was still a single-story building about half the size it is today. The second floor, an expanded footprint, was done in 2012. All right, and on our third stop here at the corner of Brady and Marshall. At 1697, under construction currently, a new dwelling. On the southwest corner there was a duplex that was lost to fire about 20 years ago. The spot had been vacant until a recent proposed development just began on construction. And 1696-98 North Marshall was historic name was the Lillian Young residence, and it was built in 1906 of a German Renaissance revival style. And the duplex is now a 5-family, designed initially by Wolf and Evans and Ewens architects. And then across the street on Brady, 900 to 904 Brady, was a condominium built in 2000. There were 4 condominiums on that site. A small 2-story front gable cottage was replaced by these condominiums. And it was like many cottages in the vicinity of the district. The raised brick basement was probably added for additional living space several years after the house was built. This type of house was known locally as a Polish flat because the immigrant Poles who popularized that building type were prominent residents of the Brady Street district. This is the only district's example of Polish flat, although there are many other examples scattered throughout the neighborhood in north of East Brady Street. Here we are on our 4th stop, Brady and Astor. And at 1006 East Brady Street, we find the Pabst Brewing Company Saloon, now known as Roman Coin, which was built in 1890. Its historic use always was a tavern. It was a tide house and it was associated with the Pabst Brewing Company. It was very prevalent for various brewers to open their own taverns and sell their particular product. As you can see, it's done in a bit of a Romanesque revival style by the architect Otto Strack. At the time that the district was listed on the National Register, the exterior had been painted gray. In 2001, the windows were opened up and the gray painted over to present what we see today. Similarly, in 1903, Schlitz Brewing Company opened their own tavern here at the southwest corner. And it too is a Romanesque revival style, and again was a tied house. Now the offices of a prominent Milwaukee architectural firm. The original mosaic of the Schlitz Brewing Company logo was incorporated into the East Brady Street elevation and exists yet today. The former Astor Theater was built in 1914. That's a building we see immediately across the street here. It was done by a prominent Milwaukee architect, Hugo Miller. The theater had a 950-seat capacity, and both motion pictures and vaudeville performers played at the theater. A major alteration in 1939 streamlined the exterior, and a new semicircular canopy was installed, which rounded the corner of Brady Street. This canopy remains the building's principal architectural feature today. The Astor was last used as a theater in 1952. In 1955, the interior was stripped and remodeled for Roa's Films, which sold media equipment, film strips, motion pictures. The upper floor was converted to flats. Roa's vacated the building in 1984, and the step-down first story was remodeled for use by the Brady Street Pharmacy, which featured a diner where I often had breakfast when I lived around the block. Around 2010, the building was again repurposed to house the current expanded version of Gloriosa's Bakery, which had existed mid-block on the north side of Brady for many years. Finally, the Albert Richter Building was built in 1895. It was originally a retail building and most likely would have been a bakery with residential on the upper level. Other uses here was the Tobacco Road and prior to that, Joint Venture, which was a head shop as they were called back when Brady Street District was Milwaukee's version of the Haight-Ashbury District of San Francisco. Here we are at the end of our tour, our fifth and final stop, intersection of Humboldt and Brady. It's an appropriate place for us to end our tour, given that Brady Street actually ended here at one point in time, prior to St. Hedwig's being constructed, and prior to the extension of Brady Street eastward. The lands east of Humboldt Avenue, then named Racine Street, was swampy land and cow pasture all the way to Prospect through the mid-1800s. The building on the northwest corner was constructed in 2017. It replaced a single-story building that was rather nondescript and had been originally a laundromat and later a doggy daycare. Of greater significance, this was the site of Brady Street's largest fire and most significant building loss. On January 27, 1946, the existing Queen Anne-style commercial building caught fire and was completely destroyed. Thankfully, all the occupants escaped unharmed. Ironically, the firehouse, located just a block to the east, had just been vacated for remodeling a few weeks prior. Unknown to me, until I was preparing for this tour, one of the first cemeteries in the area existed on the block bounded by Brady Street, Humboldt Avenue, Kewanee to the south, and Astor Street to the west. Human remains are said to still exist on this site and have been discovered on occasion. I once lived in a flat on the west side of Humboldt, mid-block between Brady and Kewanee. Now I realize why I felt so creepy when I was in the basement of that building. So, While I know that this tour is relatively short and has not covered all of the vast history of Brady Street, I do intend to do another tour. But thank you for coming along with me at this time, and hopefully you've learned something new about our wonderful Brady Street area. Thank you.